All right, guys, welcome back to the Raw Grass podcast. Today we have Brian Shaw here, also known as Doc Brian Shaw, right?
Yeah, Doc B. They call me Doc B.
Doc B. So yeah, if you want to look him up on Facebook, Instagram, what else you want?
I have a
right now?
YouTube channel called Teflon Soul,
Oh,
and also Stewards of Earth,
nice.
and then Stewards of Earth at Facebook, and also a website that we're building right now. It's a nonprofit organization that we're going to be working with, kind of the housed community and the unhoused community, the homeless, and networking to bridge that gap and try to see if we can't do something to help them.
That is so cool. Yeah, so for who he is, I wanted to say with him, he's has so much. I would say you've lived a life, or like, I would say a lot of lives.
I was raised most of my life on a farm ranch. We had a cattle ranch, and I pretty much, me and my brothers and sisters kind of ran the ranch while my dad worked as a whistleblower for Housing and Urban Development Agency. He was working for HUD, and as a whistleblower, your job is to report wrongdoing within the corporation, and he did that and ended up getting fired for reporting wrongdoing because the wrongdoing was attached to his direct supervisor, and he also had ties in some kind of organized crime ring. I don't know who or which one it was, but when my dad was fired, I was probably 8 or 9 years old. We were living in New York. He was working in Buffalo for HUD, and he blew the whistle, and our house ended up getting burnt down, and almost 300 head of cattle were shot in our field when we came home one weekend. So it was pretty traumatic for a young kid to come home to that and go, what's going on here? And then, so my dad shipped us off. I was born in California, but we went to New York for my dad to have that job. And we were there 8 years. I think it was a winter of 77 or 78. We moved when it was a huge storm. And that happened with my dad and the cattle and the house burnt down and all that. And so me and my younger brother and my older sister, she's 10 months older. We were both born in 1965. I guess they call that Irish twins. Yeah, my dad should have been slapped. My mom comes home with a baby and she gets pregnant again. Poor mama. But we went underground for about 2 years. We came out to California and we were under protection underground because that dust was settling with my dad's reporting of the wrongdoing within the corporation of HUD. I don't know all the details of it, but my dad fought it all the way to the United States Supreme Court. You can look it up as case V.L. Shaw against the people, and ended up losing in the Supreme Court, but fought it all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
Wow.
In fact, People magazine did an article about him one time, and they said he was one of the most legal conceptual minds of our time. And it was a principal thing for him because my dad was in World War II. He was in 11 battle campaigns, Macon Raid, battle, Aleutian Islands, all over the South Pacific in the Navy on the USS Nashville. And when he came home, he was, we won the war, but a patriot. He felt like he was an American patriot. And, those guys were told, they don't make them like that anymore, Jay. But they were told, go home, make a family, and build the country back, and that's what they did. And so my dad was born in 1922. So I was raised old school.
Yeah.
And he left home at 14 because he went through a traumatic experience with his dad, who was an alcoholic and used to abuse him. And so some of that abuse came into our relationship and under my dad, and the stress and all that he was under. I'm not giving him an excuse by any means, but we went through that too as kids and had to, get through some of that. My dad, one time, I'm gonna say something it's out there a little bit. I played football for Vacaville High School, and I brought a friend home from football practice, and he was a black kid, and he was my buddy, man. We played football together, and I brought him home, and my dad says, "Don't you bring no black people here." And I'm like, I never heard my dad say that or act like that, or he never taught us any of that. he didn't teach us to be prejudiced.
Okay.
But that was the first time I ever heard anything like that out of my dad. And then about 2 years later, my mom and dad got a divorce. Now I'm about 15, almost 16. And my dad brings his secretary home because my mom and dad got a divorce, and she's black. And I said, Dad,
you're like, what's going
don't you
on?
bring no black girls to my house, you know. But that was my mom, man. I call her my chocolate mom. She calls herself my chocolate mom for 28 years, and still she's alive. She's in her 80s now. She's an amazing woman. She worked for Fantasy Records and Tapes and did fashion design for album covers for Lionel Richie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Sly and the Family Stone. My dad wrote Marvin Gaye's last contract for him. Actually, when Marvin Gaye got killed by his father, the story is he came into this hotel. They were staying in a hotel together, and Marvin was struggling with drug addiction and stuff like that. You know, I think crack was a big thing back then, but I don't know all the details. But I know that when he came in, his dad was, you're a piece of crap. You'll always be a piece of crap until you show me $1 million in cash, you know, in front of me. Then I'll say you made it, Marvin. And my dad wrote that contract that got him that $1 million. He laid that $1 million in front of his dad, showed it to him, and his dad shot him and then shot himself. And that's how Marvin Gaye died.
Wow.
Yeah, real heavy. So, and then my stepmom, I call her my stepmom. She was a mama to me, and still alive today. But for 28 years, well, wait a minute, 50. Let's see, I'm 57, and they got together when I was 15.
Well,
so for all those years,
good.
she's been my stepmom, and
That's awesome.
and she, you know, I was a country boy raised on a farm.
Yeah.
We raised over 3,800 head of beef growing up, and raised our own garden, so I really wasn't an inner city kid, or I didn't really know about the inner city. I didn't know about gangs. I didn't know about culture.
Yeah.
I didn't know about all that stuff, and so I was in for the shock of my life when my chocolate mama took me to the hood.
Oh,
And
yeah,
she took us right into Vallejo, right into Oakland. We lived in Oakland for a while, lived in Vallejo, and
Well, how
we
was
were
that?
we were the only white kids on the block. It was tough and touch and go for a while, but they respected her. They respected her family. They respected her dad, who was a prominent figure in the black community. So, for the most part, they embraced us too and respected us. So they called me White Chocolate. so
Yeah.
I just went with it, man. I'm like, that's cool, man. So, but that was my first real interaction of experiencing the inner city.
Okay.
And so I always had kind of a heart for down and outers and people that are struggling. And,
Yeah.
you know, I had a pretty good family life other than the divorce, which was traumatic and hard on all of us. But and there's a lot of details in that. We'll get to it maybe some other time. But I developed a burden, even though I didn't know really what it was. It was just compassion for others, respect for another human life, period. You know, and at that point, when we moved to the city, I was just a country boy, never been in trouble and all that. And then I got all tangled up with, you know, drugs was in the city. People were stealing, so I learned to steal and do stuff.
Yeah.
I worked for a chop shop that was masquerading as a towing company, and I had allegedly YouTube stolen about $2 million worth of cars. And I had another tow truck buddy that had a contract with law enforcement to clear cars off the freeway and stuff. And he says, "Hey, man, they're going to raid your shop."
Oh.
And we had a chop shop. We were taking cars apart. And,
Yep.
You know, this is years and years ago. I'm like 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
Until about till 1989. So I was about 21 or 2 then, somewhere in there. I was born in 1965. But so 65, 67, 68, 69. So what is that, 23 years? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I worked for that towing company for a while and just hooked up to whatever car was valuable and brought it into them, and you know, got paid in drugs, real good paycheck. And I thought I was coming up in the world, man.
Yeah.
But when I was told that the heat was coming down and they're going to raid our shop, I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii.
Oh, you said I'm out.
And I said, I'm out.
Dang.
And I landed in Hawaii. My sister just moved over there. And I was gonna sleep on her floor until I could get a job and get things going and stuff. She invited me, said, come on over here. And so I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii. And I was sleeping on her floor and walking down the streets in Waikiki. You know, I don't know if you've ever been to Hawaii. Have you ever been? It's real touristy on that side, the Oahu Island. And I ended up falling in love with surfing and doing stuff like that. But walking down the streets of Waikiki, I saw this guy carrying a cross.
Okay.
And I was like, I've never been religious. I always consider myself a Christian or a believer. But I was felonious too, you know. I was stealing cars and stuff. so I felt bad about it. Trust me, I felt bad about it, but not too bad, you know. Not yet. But so I'm walking down the street in Waikiki. I see this guy carrying a cross, and he was a big fat guy, and I was kind of heavy set myself at that time, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But I walked up to this guy and I started poking at him, like making fun of him.
Okay.
What do you think? You're some kind of fat Jesus or something, man? What do you? And I started prodding at him, you know, and he just laughed it off. And everything I could throw at that guy, man, he threw love back.
Wow.
And it blew me away because I was trying to provoke a fight or get in trouble here.
Yeah.
And everything I threw at him, he just seemed to wrap it up somehow and throw love back. And then I noticed other people were treating him badly, spitting on him, cussing at him, ridiculing him. The same thing I was doing when I first saw him.
Okay.
And so I started trying to protect him. Hey, man, leave him alone. Let him do his thing. And then he got in my face and said, hey, stop. If they're persecuting me, if they're coming after me, that's between them, me, and God. It's not your business. And he stopped me. And I'm going, what? I want to help you, man. These guys are calling you this, spitting on you. I'm not going to let this happen. And he goes, if you want to hang out, you can go sit over there and you can watch, but leave me alone and let me do what I do. And I just folded my arms and went and sat on the sidelines. I'm going, man, that guy put me in my place, man.
Yeah.
And I watched as people ridiculed him, and it broke my heart. And at the end of the night, I stayed there watching him for 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
You know, just hanging out, drinking a Slurpee or whatever, and watching him. How he interacted with the public, how the public interacted with him. And it broke my heart because I heard stories about Jesus and stuff like that. And I wasn't really religious, but I saw and imagined Jesus in him and being treated like that by today's public and persecuted. And that kind of blew me away. It kind of changed my heart a little bit. And I was like, wow, man, that pricked me in the heart. And he goes, at the end of the night, he goes, hey, man, thanks for staying out of that. He says, I'm giving my testimony at this church. You want to come on Wednesday? I go, no way, man. Listen, I was in a Catholic school, raised Catholic. My dad was trying to keep the family together, so he switched to Mormonism. At 18 years old, I married a Wicca witch who was a backslidden Jehovah's Witness. I don't want nothing to do with Jehovah's Witness, Catholic, Mormon, religion, or anything else. And even Jesus, I don't want nothing to do with all that.
Yeah.
I ain't going to church. And he goes, come on, man, it's not like a regular church service. Just come hear me talk.
Okay.
Let me tell my story, man. Come. And I go, okay, man, I'll go. And I gave him my phone number. We didn't have cell phones back then.
Right.
So
like
I gave we had a pager, you know. Page me, man. I'll call you back. Yeah, sure. Anyways, I gave him my address and my phone number. And as I'm walking away, I'm kicking myself going, why did I just tell that guy I would go? You know, I have integrity, and a man's only as good as his word. And my daddy always taught me that, you know, and I told him I'd go, so I have to go.
Yeah.
And I was mad at myself. And so he has this guy call my number. I'm at my sister's house. It's her number, actually. And I answered the phone. Hello. And he said, hey, this is Brother Ben. Is Brother Brian there? And I'm going, Brother Brian, what are we, Amish now? You know, I'm going, oh, this just went from bad to worst, you know? And I'm thinking that. I didn't say it out loud, but I go, yeah, this is Brother Brian.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, this is Brother Ben. I'm going to come over and pick you up, and I'll give you a ride to church. I go, okay. He goes, where you at? Told him where I was at. And he said, I'll be there in about 20 or 30 minutes. I am watching that clock like a hawk, man. And I'm going, I walked to the door, put my hand on the doorknob, and I was going to leave before he got there. I am not going to church. Even though I told that guy I'm going, I'm not going. I'm going to break my word. I'm not going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I let go of the doorknob, and I'm wrestling with myself. I told him I would go. I'm not going to go. I'm going to go. Yeah. I'm not going to go. I'm going to go.
Of course.
And I finally opened the door. We're on the third story in a little studio apartment on Waikiki Beach. I open the door. I run down the hallway. And I'm trying to get it before he comes, pushing the elevator button. Come on, go. And the elevator didn't come up. So I run down to the end of the frickin' hallway.
Uh-huh.
Roll up the window. I'm climbing down the fire escape.
Oh, you're trying to get out of there.
I'm getting out of this building before this guy gets here, man. I'm climbing down the fire escape, and this little Asian guy comes to the bottom of the fire escape. He said, hey, screaming 3 stories up. I'm coming down. You Brian? I go, yeah, you Brother Ben?
Oh, my
and
God.
My shoulders just dropped, and I'm going, you got me.
You got him.
You know? So I get in the car and I go to this freaking church that I didn't want to go to. And it was called Calvary Church of the Islands on the other side of the island. So it wasn't like I could just walk away, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm stuck in this guy's car and we're talking small talk. And we get to the church and I see that guy that was carrying the cross, the big heavy set guy. And he, hey man, you made it. Come on. And I sat down and I'm sitting there just going, what am I doing here, man? I don't feel like I belong here. I don't look like them. I don't smell like them. I don't talk like them. I'm just like a fish out of water in this environment. And this guy began to tell his story about how he used to bounce biker bars and steal cars and do drugs and all this stuff, man. And it started ringing home with me. I go, man, did that guy read my mail? He's telling my story.
Yeah.
Who told him this? This is a setup, man. This wasn't like candid camera back then, but this has got to be a setup, man.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, he gave an invitation, and you know, like I said, I'm not religious. I didn't want anything to do with churchianity or Christianity or all that stuff. I believed in God. I believed that there's got to be a God. Look at the creation. The creation groans that there's somebody in charge making that stuff. You know, it didn't just blow up. You don't walk into an auto parts store, light a bomb, and have a Bugatti sitting there. You know,
I'm not sure. You have.
It assembled itself.
It's fine though. If you
hey,
are
listen,
out there
if you want to believe that way, that's okay.
fine.
But I'm telling my story right now.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I was struggling with all this myself.
Yeah.
So I heard this guy give his story, and in long story short, I responded to his call, and he said, if anybody else wants to surrender their lives to the Lord, come on up.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I came up. It was April 26, 1989 at 7:30 p.m.
Oh, he knows the exact time.
The exact time.
That's
April
awesome.
26, 1989 at 7:30 p.m. And I went in and prayed that prayer, not even really believing it, but my heart really wanted to cry out. You know, I felt I had wronged people. I had stolen cars. I was wrestling with the drug addiction. I was going through that. So I ended up, this guy ended up getting me into Teen Challenge. I went into Teen Challenge and I stayed in that program for a little while. And I got kicked out for fighting, and then I went back in and I got kicked out for fighting.
Wild.
And then I ended up speaking for Teen Challenge. I think I was the only person to ever be kicked out twice, and ended up speaking for them on a national level on radio and TV and different things like that.
Oh, nice.
So I did that for a little while, but I backslid right into, I think ice was the big thing, the meth coming into the islands.
Okay.
And so I backslid into that, and this pastor from this church and this guy that carried the cross, his name was Denny Nisley, with plug for Denny at Christ in Action Ministries. He goes to all the disasters all over the world and helps people dig out of those problems. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Andrew.
Oh wow, he's doing big things.
Any tornadoes. He was at the Trade Center when it went down. He was at the Pentagon building with a big tent set up, feeding the workers there. He's just top-notch guy.
You're awesome.
He's awesome. Denny, I love you, man. And but that was the beginning of the battle. That was when I first started facing my giant.
Okay.
And I ended up, struggling through all kinds of stuff. That was, the pastor and him came over when I was backslidden, and I ended up, a few times, Denny told me one time, he says, you are the hardest rodeo pony that God ever had me ride. And I said, I'm so sorry, man. I cried with tears in my eyes. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be.
Yeah.
But I remember one time taking a big stick and just busting this glass right over their heads, both of them, and grabbing Denny, putting him up against the wall, choking him with his phone cord, put my knees in him, and we were
Wow.
Well, he would ask me stuff like, hey, man, how you doing? Are you playing with pornography or anything? I said, man, that's not your business.
Okay.
So he was getting my business in my face. I thought, man, that's kind of intrusive. I thought maybe, you need to stay out of my business. He said, you are my business, man. I'm worried about you. So he just got aggressive with my life and personal. But anyway, that's a long story. And I don't want to get into that right now, but I ended up going through part of Teen Challenge and then finishing later. And then I went to a Bible school and studied. And I ended up actually falling in love with people, even in spite of themselves or ourselves, because we all fall short. You know what I mean? We all have dirty diapers, and I've had many of them, and they stink, and we all fall short. We've all lied. We've all blown it. We've all turned around backwards and upside down, and maybe some of us more than others. And I think there was a verse in the Bible that says, I think Paul said one time, and I didn't mean to start this as a church thing, but Paul said, I was the chief of sinners, and I go, wow, you read about Paul's conversion, how he was hunting Christians and getting them fed to the lions, and then all of a sudden he gives his life, surrenders his life to God, and he repents and says, I was the chief of sinners. I could relate to that because I felt like, I was the chief of sinners. I used to collect dope money. I used to kick in doors. I used to use an 8-pound sludge and bust the wall. I've done some crazy, stupid, upside down stuff. And this chop shop I was working for in Fremont, California, was affiliated with a 1% biker group that I won't mention any names or club names or anything like that. But so I was getting in kind of deeper and over my head at that point. And anyways, I had a change in my direction at that point when I left Hawaii. I went to Bible school, and then and I fell in love with the Word of God. I've been studying for 26 years. I actually have a doctorate degree in Divinity now, and a doctorate in outreach, doctorate in outreach ministry is community outreach. And so I got involved in community outreach. I started working on the streets with the drug addicts, the dealers, the prostitutes, and things like that. And I began to talk to some of the girls out there, not in a way that I was picking them up, but like, hey, how can we help you guys?
Okay.
Why are you out here? I'm beginning to ask questions like that and talk to them and build relationships, And this one girl, I was leaning on her car. It was out in front of a strip joint. And she comes up and says, get off my car. I said, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I got off it and I said, we're out here to try to help you guys. And she goes, how can you help me? She said, I got to work. I got to feed my kids. I got to do. I said, well, we'll help you. And then instantly I started thinking, who's we? Do I have a mouse in my pocket? If she wants help right now, where am I going to send her?
Okay.
So I write a letter. I'm in Georgia now. I went to work for Denny's ministry for a few years.
Yeah.
And but I went to Mardi Gras 8 times with Denny. I went to Indy 500 5 times. The Kentucky Derby 3 times. Telling people about what God did in our lives and passing out gospel tracts, dragging the cross, and having a great time doing that. And I was exposed to what they called street outreach ministry. And so there was many dynamics of different people out there living on the streets, working the streets, selling drugs on the streets, that I kind of fell in love with some of the people, and I saw their need for help. So that girl, if she would have responded to me saying, "Hey, yeah, I want help,"
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had an answer for her.
Mm.
So I wrote a letter to 500 churches in 100 circle miles.
Okay.
I researched it and I found in 100 circumference miles, there was 500 churches in the Bible Belt. I was right on the buckle, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't get one response. Hey, can you pastors come together and help us? We're helping these girls on the streets. They're being sex trafficked. Can you help us? Not one response. So I wrote another letter and sent it out again. I got one call from a guy that said, "Hey, man, God bless you in your endeavor. We're praying for you." And he hung up.
And he didn't do anything?
One call, didn't do nothing.
How come
so
do you think?
I was a youth pastor at this
Okay.
church. Well, and then, you know, sometimes you ask that question, how come you think, and I'm going to back up to
Okay.
that. Sometimes people just don't want to get their hands dirty with other people's problems because they've got enough problems of their own.
Yeah, but
And that's the only way I know how to judge it. But yeah, we're supposed to love them.
Okay.
And so to me, it was a check like, why are you guys pastors if you're not going to help or love them?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
That's what I was thinking.
like-
Just exactly what you're thinking.
yeah, outreach. Yeah.
Yeah. Why aren't you there for that?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're giving your life to do?
Yeah.
So I between there somewhere as a youth pastor, I got married and I asked my wife. I said, "Can we bring these people home?"
Oh.
So we converted our garage into 8 bunk beds and a dorm room, and we filled it with people from the streets and people from, you know, different problems like
That's
that.
awesome.
Started rescuing people.
Yeah.
And then different people started giving, and you know, more businesses and individuals helped. There was a couple churches that ended up standing up and helping us a little bit later as we got established.
Okay.
And we ended up buying a 72-acre facility and had over 146 kids, aged 13 to 21,
Wow.
live with us, and we're licensed in the state of Tennessee as a residential rehab for kids on drugs and alcohol and life-controlling problems. So I moved out of Georgia. We moved to Tennessee. I had a 33-acre ranch in Georgia.
Okay.
So we bought a 72-acre ranch in Tennessee.
Wow.
And it had a 7-acre lake on it. It was an old youth camp. And had a church chapel, 3 cabins, 11,000 square foot building with indoor pool and commercial kitchen, a 5-bedroom house.
Dang.
Very nice facility. And we bought it for $145,000.
Yeah.
And I said, man, we could do this and make the payment. I should be able to, you know, do whatever, collect cans if I have to and make the payment on this.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing that for about 10, 11 years.
Dang.
146 kids came through our program.
That's
And
huge.
you really don't even know how you helped them until 10 years later you get a call and say, I found you. I just want to say thanks for what you did when I was a kid.
Wow.
I got a family now. I went through college. I did this.
Yeah.
You know, and
all
that's payday. Yeah.
Because of you on how you were, I guess, raised, and then what
We
you
were tough on them
went
kids,
through,
man.
so-
And then we linked up with another ministry called Youth Reach. That we were called Eternity Ministries. Then we linked up with another ministry called Youth Reach, and I think they've helped over 5,000 kids conglomerately now. And they're still going. It's still
Wow.
going. In fact, when I went through a divorce, ended up going through a divorce after that period of having all those kids, and it was just dynamic. I had gained so much weight, and my wife looked at me one day and said, I didn't want to be married to a fat guy.
Oh.
And she really said that. And there was some other dynamics too. But
Yeah.
anyways, we ended up getting a divorce, and I ended up giving the ranch to
her?
another young couple. I said, hey, keep running this. I'm out of here, and I left. Wow. And I took 5 years and just went into basically my cave and said, well, God's done with me, man. I'm divorced. I got my tail between my legs, took the wind out of my sail. I'm like, that's not the first time I've had, you know, a hit like that in my life. And so, you know, obviously I'm off drugs. 1989, I quit doing drugs in 1989, 1990 is when I stopped doing drugs. So I'm almost, 33 years clean.
Wow.
Other than, you know,
That's
maybe
awesome.
a New Year's toast or something like what the hospital gave me when I broke my neck, which is
Yeah.
another story. But other than that, I took about 5 years, and I just crawled in a hole, and I built my plumbing company because I had so much trouble raising money as a nonprofit organization with the church that I said, man, I'm going to build a plumbing company that will fuel what I really want to do, my passion project, work with people.
So you were okay. Like, you were doing so much and you weren't seeing it put back. So now you want to do something that
I wanted to create a business model that would help me fund what I was trying to do as a passion project. You know what I mean? So plumbing was my trade. I was a plumber on the ranch for Dad, and I grew up in plumbing, and my first job was a plumber. And so I learned how to do all that stuff. And then I got my contractor's license up in Seattle, Washington, and within a year I was doing $1 million a year in a plumbing company.
That's no joke.
And I had 10 trucks in Seattle. And